Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Dinamine Nam Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Dinamine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gaudavani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavani Paschatya Desha Dharine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gaudavani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavani Paschatya Shri Guru Jagannath Padma Kevala Bhakti Sarma Shri Guru Jagannath Bhakti Sarma Loli Kavadana Krishna Prapti Hoy Hoy Krishna Prapti Hoy Hoy Guru Mukha Padma Vakya Jite Te Koliya Aikya Guru Mukha Padma Vakya Jite Te Koliya Aikya Arana Koliya Aikya Jai Prasade Puri Sarva Asha Devasai Pure Sarva Takudan Janne Janne Prabhu Shaya Janne Prabhu Shaya Yagre Prakashito Yagre Prakashito Prema Bhakti Hoite Havid Gandhi Nashata Prema Bhakti Hoite Havid Gandhi Nashata Gai Jahar Charito Jaya Bhagam Charito Sri Guru Guru Tindu Hadama Janara Bhagavad Lokera Jivan Tabu Paradaya Devamare Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada 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 Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Nityananda Yadvaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Srimad Bhakti Saram Saraswati Thakur ki jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki jai. Prem se kaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Jaya Sri Sri Radha Krishna Gaur Gopinath Shama Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jaya Vrindavan Dham Ki Jaya Mayapur Dham Ki Jaya Jagannath Swami Ki Jaya Gangamayi Ki Jaya Jamunamayi Ki Jaya Tulsi Devi Ki Jaya Bhakti Devi Ki Jaya Samaveta Bhaktivinoda Ki Jaya. All glories be assembled above it. Gaur Premanandi Hari Hari. Namaste Narasingaya. Namaste Narasingaya. Naraladari Hiranyakashipu Purvakya. Hiranyakashipu Purvakya. Lalitam Hiranyakasipu Tanubingam Keshavadritta Narahari Rupa Jaya Jagadisha Hare Jaya Jagadisha Hare Jaya Jagadisha Hare. Oh. Well, moving right along. Oh, look. Monsieur. Boy. So, Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivara Dhari Manatira Panachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Gopjana Vallabha Girivara Dhari Jodanandana Vrajadana Ranjana Panachari Madhava Kunja Vihari Madhava Kunja Vihari. Srimad Bhagavatam translation and purports by Srila Prabhupada. 7:141. See we got. So these are also verses that purport. So actually,
Is it 40?
it's 42. We did this one.
Okay.
Oh.
He says 42. Did 41.
Yeah, I read the history. Oh, yeah, day 4. Okay. Right. That's right. Yesterday is we're learning now. So this is a very simple verse. Hiranyakashipu. So we'll just chant it and then we'll explain it simple. Hiranyakashipu putram.
Hiranyakashipu putram.
Prahlādam Keshava Priyam. Jigāngsura Nana. Yatana Mrityu Hetave. So it's very simple. Hiranyakashipu is the subject of this sentence. So putram, because putra ends with an M, it's going to be the object of the verb. So, and prahlādam, so all these words that end in M, putram, prahlādam, keshava, priyam, they all refer to Prahlad. So it's his son, who was Prahlad, who was dear to Keshava. Jigāngsur, whoa. So Jigāngsur is like Jigyasu. It means it's a desiderative form that means a person who wants to perform the action of the verb. So in this case, he wanted to kill. So the simple sentence is Hiranyakashipu wanted to kill Prahlad. And so that's Hiranyakashipu, Putram Prahladam Keshava Priyam Jigansur. So he wanted to kill his son Prahlad, who was dear to Keshava, and therefore Akarot, he did Nana, which means various yatana, tortures or attacks. Mrityu hetave, the same word hetu, which we talked about, causeless. So hetave here is used to mean motive. So hetave means for the motive of death. In other words, to kill his son. So hetave, that's the reason he did it, with that motive, to kill his son. He devised all these different tortures. So he was a creative thinker in a very demonic way. So we'll chant this now. Hiranyakashipu putram Prahlādam Keshava Priyam Jigāngsur Akaro Nana Yatana Mrityu Hetave.
Hiranyakashipu putram.
Hiranyakashipu putram
Prahlādam Keshava Priyam.
Prahlādam Keshava Priyam
Jigasur Akaram Nana.
Jigāngsur Akaro Nana
Yatana Mrityu Hetave.
Yatana Mrityu Hetave.
Hiranyakashipu putram
Hiranyakashipu putram
Prahlādam Keshava Priyam
Prahlādam Keshava Priyam
Jigāngsura Nana Yatana Mrityu Hetave.
Yatana Mrityu Hetave.
Hiranyakashipu putram
Hiranyakashipu putram Prahlādam Keshava Priyam
Jigāngsur Akaro Nana
Jigāngsur Akaro Nana Yatana Mrityu Hetave. So one phonetic note in that word Jigangsur, the M with a dot under it, sometimes the dot under it, depending on the type you're using, typeface. It's not an M. It's actually a pure nasal sound. It's just like in the English word sing, sing, or song, and so some people say Nrsimha, which is incorrect. It's actually Nrsimha. It's just like the English word sing. It's a pure nasal sound. So you're welcome. Anyway, so then we'll go to the next verse, which has a purport. So let's chant that. Tang sarva bhutatma bhutam prashantam samadarshanam bhagavat tejasa spristam na shaknot hantum udyamai. So what this means is, so tam, him, is still referring to Prahlad. So this is, so when you see that word tam, him, which is the accusative, it's again the object of the verb, you understand that it goes with putram, Prahladam. So they're still talking about Prahlad. So tang sarva bhutatma bhutam. This is a very interesting word. Sarva bhut, he made all creatures. How should I say? This is something like in Sanskrit, he had like universal empathy. So he became the soul of all creatures. Sarva bhuta, because bhuta means, of course, a creature. And I explained this in the Gita guide that bhu, the verb bhu in Sanskrit, can mean to be or also to become, to come to be. And so that's why probably the most common way in the Gita that Krishna says what we would call a conditioned soul is by simply the word bhuta, which doesn't mean ghost here. It's a special meaning. This is the normal meaning. And it means a conditioned soul because literally means someone who has come to be. So obviously we know from the Gita, the soul never comes to be. The soul is eternal. What comes to be is our false ego, our identity, having a particular body, gender, nationality, race, species, blah, 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 all that. So therefore a Buddha, literally one who has come to be, means the false ego or the conditioned soul, because our condition has come to be. Like, for example, the condition of being human, of being a male or female, the condition of belonging to a certain country or family. It's not eternal, it just comes to be. And as Krishna explains in the Gita, anything that comes to be will stop existing. So this identity we have now of a particular country or gender or whatever, because it came to be, it must stop existing. That's the basic ontology of the Gita. In the beginning of chapter 2, that nasato vidyate bhavo, anything that didn't exist before then comes to be will not exist in the future. And anything which has always existed will never stop existing. So that is so Sarva Bhuta, like all conditioned souls, Atma Bhuta, he became the soul of all conditioned souls. So this is a phrase which also you find in the Gita, Sarva Bhutatma Bhutatma, which Krishna even makes it even more extensive. Prabhupada translates it here as the soul in all entities. And then in the translation, he says, the soul, the Lord, the super soul of all living entities is sober. So Prabhupada is taking this to mean Krishna. I mean, grammatically, can also mean Prahlad. So if it means Prahlad, it means he had perfect empathy. If it means Krishna, it means literally that he's in the heart of all living beings. So anyway, I won't give my, analysis of what it can also mean Prahlad. Because if you look at it's Samadarsanam, so Tang Sarva Bhutana Bhutam, Prashantam, which means very peaceful. So Shanta means, pacified, peaceful, and then Prashantam is sort of makes it a little stronger. And then Samadarshanam, seeing equally, equal vision. Sama, anyone know the English word or prefix that comes from a sama? Same. Same, homo. Because just like Sindhu, Hindu, so samo, homo. Like homogeneous, for example. So Prashantam Samadarshana, having equal vision, and then Bhagavat Tejasa Sprishtam, So, I mean, what Prabhupada, the way Prabhupada translates is certainly correct, but also there are indications that it refers to Prahlada. And it can be both, because Krishna is not introduced as another person. So grammatically, it seems to carry over from Prahlada. But anyway, won't go into all the technical details. So Bhagavad Tejasa Sprishnam. So this is Prahlada. He was touched by the potency of the Lord. So Tejas means like potency or splendor. And so Tejasa means by the potency. So by the potency of Bhagavan, he was touched. And therefore, Hiranyakashipu na shakno. This is na, not, and then the verb ashakno, which is the past tense of the verb shak, from which you get like the word shakti. So the verb shak, like shaknoti, means one is able to do something. One has the power to do something. So na ashakno, he was unable. He was unable. Huntum, this is the verb hun, to kill. And anyway, because of Sandhi, because of the D in shaknot, the D and the H takes on another D. Nashaknot huntum. So actually, Sanskrit Sandhi, they're not like arbitrary phonetic rules. They actually reflect the way human beings actually speak. The way human beings actually speak. So nashak no huntum, nashak no huntum. Anyway, won't go into phonetics now. It's a little early in the morning for phonetics. So nashak no huntum and udyama. Udyama means like an endeavor, like you raise up something or you're trying to do something. So udyama. So by all his endeavors, he did not have the power to kill Prahlad, who was touched by the power of God. So that's what it literally says here. Anyway, there are more grammatical arguments, but I won't give them. So, Prabhupada's translation. The Lord, the super soul of all living entities, is sober, peaceful, and equal to everyone. Since the great devotee Prahlad was protected by the Lord's potency, Hiranyakashipu was unable to kill him in spite of endeavoring to do so in various ways. So in this verse, the word sarva bhutatma bhutam is very significant. Ishwarak sarva bhutanam hridesharjinatishati. The Lord is equally situated in the core of everyone's heart. So taking it the way Prabhupada did, it also means that Hiranyakashipu could not kill Krishna, which he tried to do. So actually Hiranyakashipu was sort of an equal opportunity demon. So he tried to kill Prahlad, and then when the Lord appeared as Narsingha, he tried to kill Narsingha also. He's sort of trying to kill everyone here. Iranian. So, so that's what it means. So Krishna's equally situated in the core of everyone's heart. Thus, he cannot be envious of anyone or friendly to anyone. I mean, Krishna is friendly to everyone. He says in the Bhagavad Gita, he's a well-wishing friend of everyone. Prabhupada means friendly, like that old saying, you know, a good lawyer knows the law. A great lawyer knows the judge. So, so here Prabhupada is taking the word friend to mean like, you know, you're my buddy, so I'm going to favor you. Otherwise, Krishna says in the Gita, he's everyone's friend. For Krishna, everyone is the same. Although he is sometimes seen to punish someone, this is exactly like a father's punishing his child for the child's welfare. The Supreme Lord's punishment is also a manifestation of the Lord's equality. Therefore, the Lord is described as Prashantam Samadarshanam. Though the Lord has to execute his will properly, he is equipoised in all circumstances. In other words, he has to execute his will properly. He has to be a good father. He has to, you know, take care of the kids. Sometimes need a sort of a transcendental smackdown. So he is equipoise. He is equally disposed toward everyone. So any questions on those points?
Just a simple question. You were talking about in the previous verse, the word boo. Sometimes it's, so I don't understand Sanskrit, so my question is kind of stupid. But it describes the Lord sometimes accompanied by his associate boo.
Really?
I thought, yes, or maybe it's Vishnu, his potency boo.
You have to show me a verse. That I heard of it.
Sorry.
Like in South Indian Vaishnavism, you have these deities of Narayan with Bhu, like representing.
Well, Boo can mean here.
I mean, it's another name for Bhumi.
Yeah. It's interesting because we're up to text 43 of this chapter, and we're still talking about the same philosophical point. We're still talking about the same philosophical point that Krishna doesn't favor anyone. So when he comes down to perform his pastimes, as he says in the Gita, Paritranaya Sadhanam, I save the good people and Vinashaya Chad Dushkritam, and I get rid of the bad people. And so, as I've said in several of these classes, the main atheist argument against the existence of God is that there's suffering in the world. And if God was really all merciful, there wouldn't be all this suffering in the world. There wouldn't be so much injustice. And so, why is someone born with a, I don't know, silver Ochman cup? Why is someone born with very good karma, bad karma? And of course, the reason this issue, which is called Theodicy, or the justice of God, is there justice of God? The reason it's so prominent in Western philosophy is because they have such bad theology. I think it was Augustine who insisted that you only get one life. He, sort of took upon himself the task of speaking for God, even though he had no idea what God actually thinks about the subject, but he thought he did. And so which of course is completely incompatible, contradictory to the idea of God being all merciful. Can't have it both ways. And you can do all kinds of what Prabhupada called word jugglery. You can like twist and shout, and try to be very clever. It's just like you see Augustine, not Augustine, and Aquinas. You see it in his theology. He's very smart. And most of his theology is actually very good, and we agree with it. But when he has to try to justify some irrational church doctrines, he's very sophisticated, but ultimately it doesn't work. So you can't make up for bad theology just by being very sophisticated, which he tries. He gives it the old college try. He really tries hard, and he is. He's obviously a very smart person, but ultimately he's trying to defend the theology, at least a point of theology, which is absurd and which doesn't come from God. So this issue of theodicy was especially a problem for people with that bad theology. Whereas basically in the Eastern religion, Buddhism, Vaishnavism, and even Jainism and so on, it's not a big problem, because the fact that we are reincarnating means that our suffering really is something that we created for ourselves. So, Gargamuni.
Okay, this question may be slightly irrelevant. Bhuta, sometimes devotees, use a term for ghost.
Well, sometimes it does mean ghost.
Yeah. Is that where the word boo comes from?
Like,
ghost says boo.
Oh,
that's a very deep question. Must have heard that in one of his old records. I had no idea. But Sarah's gonna get right on that.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, like if Lord is punishing, or like he takes care of justice, what is our role in the
To
world?
represent him. To represent Krishna. In other words, we should make him serve us. So that's why a king is called Rajarshi, saintly king, because a leader is supposed to represent Krishna. It's just like we say, Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Ananyas Chintyam Tamam, for those who always think of me, I bring them what they lack. So maybe all the farmers should just go sit down and start producing food. So, yeah, or Krishna says, what does it say that the Maya Dakshina Sui Prakriti Sui, that Prakriti is begetting, nature is begetting by my supervision. So maybe everyone should stop reproducing and just, no one should have children. Just wait for Krishna to produce children. The point is that we're to be a servant of Krishna means that we carry out his will.
No, carry out his will. You need to really know Krishna in order to carry his will, I mean.
No, it's not so hard because he tells us his will in the Bhagavad Gita. I mean, you can say it's in a specific situation, but in a specific situation in the material world, there may be disagreement. And of course, the famous example is Bhima and Draupadi. Bhima, true to character, immediately just wanted to kill him. And Draupadi said, Muchitam, Muchitam, let him go. So don't make his mother suffer as I've suffered. So yes, when it comes to, let's say, worldly justice, there may be disagreements, but at least the basic principles are the same.
In that sense, in that particular case, is when it becomes complicated. What is the best way the Krishna will do it, because, let's say two people are trying to serve Krishna and two people have a completely different view.
But most cases are not controversial. I mean, someone just, it's, in a sense, Draupadi was asking for special mercy. Otherwise, Bhima was right. He should have been killed. And actually, sometimes, mercy can be a little, say, misapplied because Ashwatthama was spared. He tried to kill everyone again by sending a Brahmastra. So he just wasn't a quick learner. So, although sometimes Balaram pleaded for mercy, for example, when Krishna, you can even have, two forms of Krishna kind of having a moral debate. So, and it's both the same person. So when Krishna kidnapped Rukmini, then her brother Rukmi was obviously not a genius. He was so angry, he came after Krishna, wanted to kill Krishna. And so Krishna just thought, yeah, enough's enough. So he's going to kill Rukmi. And then Balaram came and said, come on, Krishna, he's family now. He's family now. He's our brother-in-law. So Krishna just again gave him a funny haircut. Kind of funny haircuts seems to be a popular way of the popular surrogate for capital punishment. because that's what Ashwatthama cut off his crown jewel, and I guess also gave him a funny haircut, and then Rukmi got a funny haircut. What's really actually the funniest thing in this story is that Balaram, as the older brother, is telling Krishna, "Come on, Krishna, he's our brother now. You can't do this. It's your wedding, or you just took away Rukmini." But then later in the Bhagavatam, when they're playing poker or gambling or some playing dice, and Rukmi She's Balaram. He just takes out his club and bashes his brains out. And that just kills him. So he told Krishna, come on, you can't kill him. But then when he actually offended Balaram, he just get out of here. Yes,
From the pastime of Mithila, right?
Mithila. Mithila.
Mithila. Arjuna dressed up as a sannyasi. And
Wasn't that Dwarkan?
no, it's a story of Bahulashva and Shrudadev in Krishna book. But anyway, it's a similar pastime because Balaram wanted Duryodhana to, right, to marry Subhadra. Correct.
Balaram wanted Rukmini.
No, he wanted. Balaram wanted Duryodhana to marry Subhadra, but Arjuna was gazing at Subhadra and admiring her beauty, and then Subhadra was looking over at the sannyasi. Then she was on her chair.
Not the first.
It was on her chair.
Not, no, I should say not the first, not the last.
But anyway, Arjuna got on the chariot where Subhadra was sitting.
Right.
And took off with her. And Balaram was furious.
Yes,
And then Krishna says Krishna actually
fell at his feet.
fell at Balaram's feet and begged him.
Yeah, good cop, bad cop.
So
Yeah,
that's the same.
yeah. Yeah, Balaram is, Balaram is, and then Balaram becomes Nityananda. So it's a lot of fun because Krishna, like lays down the law, and Balaram is just, it's another form of Krishna, but just doing things a different way. Very interesting. I mean, just the fact that Krishna chooses to appear in these different ways as Balaram. Arjun seems to be really good at taking girls away. Like he took Subhadra and but it's funny because that's the Kshatriya. How many think there's 8 kinds of marriage in the Vedic culture, and one of them is you just take the girl. But they elope one of them is that they elope without parental permission or anyone's blessings. So it's anyway. So any other points?
I have a question, but it's not formulated. I don't understand my question. So I don't know if I should pose it because I don't even quite understand it yet. It's related to this, you were saying there's like kind of 2 ways to translate this verse.
Yes.
Krishna's in the heart of everyone, equally present with everyone.
Yeah, well, it doesn't mention being in the heart. And
Prahlada being equal vision to everyone. Also, you're saying.
well, it really it can apply to everyone. Like, for example, I mean, it can apply to a pure devotee because in the Gita, Krishna says, Atmopamyena sarvatra samam pashanti Arjuna, one who has perfect empathy and identifies with everyone. But in this case, Hiranyakashipu tried to kill both Prahlada and Narasimha, so it applies to both of them.
So this is actually the part that I'm more curious about. I always seem to want to understand why at this point in the Bhagavatam, what is that underlying message? Okay, this great demon is trying to kill both the pure devotee and Krishna and incapable of doing that. So how to understand that in relation to us on the path of trying to purify and understanding demons, the demoniac natures.
Well, it's good to know where things lead. I mean, because everyone, like it said in this age, we all have a little touch of the wild in us, a little wild side inside of us. And so then if you see where it goes, like this person, took that road and drove off a cliff. So maybe that's not a great road to take. So sometimes, just like Plato said that, he said that, it's interesting, Plato talks about eye charts at an eye doctor. So apparently optometry was going on almost 2,500 years ago. Because when in the Republic, someone, I think, someone asked Socrates the speakers, it's really Plato writing it, about what is a just person. So Plato says, just like in, the optometrist's office, you see the big letters. So he said, so rather than, focus first on the individual, what is a just or good individual? Is look at society. What's a good society? And then he describes the Republic. So, so here with Hiranyakashipu or Hiranyaksha, you see what happens if you really just don't control yourself. If you feel some envy inside of you, or you have a violent streak, like it's like I feel like smashing that person or whatever. And so what Krishna is showing us here through these pastimes is where it leads. If it's not controlled. And as we know, you can have a demonic priest, a demonic so-called representative God who slaughters thousands of people, like we see in Iran. That person was just killed. I mean, he ordered the killing of thousands and thousands of unarmed citizens. It's very interesting because in the Mahabharata, when Duryodhana, with Dhritarashtra's permission, tacit permission, burns down this house of lac, and the Pandavas flee, and everyone thought the Pandavas had died. No one knew they escaped. And so the people start criticizing the king. And it's interesting what Dhritarashtra says. He says, we better really be careful, because if the public, is really unhappy, they may just throw us out of office. It's not like, okay, send in, the Revolutionary Guard or something, send in the police and start killing the people that are criticizing the king. It's rather that we have to be careful, because killing the people is not an option. You can't kill people for criticizing the king. So we have to do a better job, or at least look like we're doing a better job. So this idea of you just literally kill tens of thousands of unarmed citizens because they don't like the fact that the government is harassing them, and the economy's crashed, and all kinds of things. And then if the people are unhappy by the fact they're being bullied and almost starved, and they protest, then you just kill them. So it's interesting how in Kali Yuga you can have someone claiming to be the head of a fairly large religious group who really acts like a demon, really acts like Hiranyakashipu. That's Kali Yuga. So these extreme examples are given not only so that we can know where the lines are, but so we can evaluate what's going on around us. So Gargacharya.
So, in relation to the like 30 or 40,000 people in Iran who were killed by this supreme leader or under his watch, there was a 36-year-old doctor who was trying to help one of those victims, and they got her and they tortured her to death.
I guess he was a doctor trying to.
She was trying to, help. So torture is mentioned in this verse. I was wondering if in the Vedic paradigm there's ever a place for torture at all, or is it just completely forbidden?
Well, I can't think of an example of a non-demon torturing someone.
Uh-huh.
was thinking of the Srimad Goswami Asakam as an answer to their question, Sarah's question,
What's that?
because it says that the Goswamis, they were equiposed to the gentle and to the ruffians, and you and I witnessed, and Srila Prabhupada, he brought people to the Hare Krishna movement that from all different walks of life. And
Oh, yeah, although Prabhupada was very, heavy, if someone came to his movement and was causing trouble or preaching some false philosophy, they would they'd be shown the door very quickly.
Yes.
But Prabhupada gave everyone the opportunity, and most religions do. I mean, Christianity, they send missionaries, actually more than the Hare Krishnas. They send missionaries all over, they to minister to poor people or third world countries and everything. So that's something you find in almost any serious religion. It's not just a bunch of murderers. You find that.
But wouldn't that be like the goal of each devotee? To become like Prahlada?
Yeah, of course that's the goal. That's why his story's in the book. So we can learn. That's precisely why the sages put this story in the Bhagavatam. Although it doesn't mean going to the sort of the extreme you see sometimes in Christianity, where you favor the poor, ignorant people, like they're somehow, the idea the meek shall inherit the earth. Meek doesn't necessarily mean economically poor. I mean, it just means you have to be humble. Of course, I don't know what the original word is that they translated meek, but yeah, I think sometimes in Christianity, not in all forms of Christianity, obviously, because there are many churches that really favor the wealthy who give sizable donations. But like the Pope, the Pope Francis, he washed the feet of sort of homeless, poor, even just homeless, dirty people in Rome. And I suppose the idea there is that if this showing that maybe everyone is a soul, it depends on what you mean by it. If you mean by it that somehow the more poor and ignorant or you are, that somehow you're closer to God, I think it's silly. I mean, a poor person may be dear to God or maybe a complete, a demonic person. And I think, it may come from this thing with the suffering Jesus, like somehow, those who are suffering the most are somehow most dear to God, but it's, but it's just not true. It's just not true that the more miserable or the more economically poor you are, that the more you're dear to God. If the condition you're in leads you to cry out to God, yeah, then if your poverty humbled you, and in that humble condition, you cried out to God. But it's not just the fact of being poor that makes you somehow dear to God or somehow deserving a special favor.
For example, in South America and Argentina, the economy and everything has been always a disaster. And their people are they seek more for God in those circumstances, I would say. Because like you say, there is people who the circumstances say,
Right. But those people, see, the real point is when they do get some money, do they stay humble? In other words, if someone is forcibly humble and is calling out to God because nothing else works, but then if something else does start working, well, I don't need God anymore. They had that famous social gospel where the duty of Catholic priests was to, fight for social justice and so on. So, I mean, to some extent, it's understandable, and to another extent, it's problematic. Prabhupada actually, sometimes people who are very poor, they approach God for money, whereas people who are not poor, in a sense, have the luxury of approaching God philosophically or out of devotion. So being very poor can also be an obstacle to approaching God with devotion.
Didn't Srila Prabhupada criticize Swami Vivekananda, who had this whole concept of Daridra Narayan?
Was that him that said that?
Yeah.
Yeah, Daridra means poor. It means,
What wasn't?
well, Vivekananda was a student of Ramakrishna, so.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, so wherever it came from, but yeah, the idea that, you know, poor people are God or something, Daridra Narayan, is obviously pretty silly. And so again, a poor person, Prabhupada and also talked about that. There's even a story where there's stories in our tradition where a poor, you know, rich person refused a Vaishnava and then a poor person accepted. So the idea that somehow or other, if you become humble, it can bring you to approach God. Yeah, that's definitely there. But it's not an absolute qualification. What happens is a lot of times poor, you know, people that are really suffering, they need to be a rich person who's having medical problems. I mean, people find religion in different ways when it's not only economic suffering, it can be a disease, it can be, you know, all kinds of things. But suffering can lead you to God. And some people, when they suffer, they become hardened atheists. They become bitter and they think, you know, God made me poor, or God gave me this disease, and it actually inflames their atheism. So what I'm objecting to is that being poor is a sufficient qualification. It's not a sufficient qualification. If your poverty leads you to cry out to Krishna or God, then yeah, it turned out to help you. But but then it goes from that to the irrational idea that being poor is sufficient to make you dear to God. If you're poor, then you're a better person than someone who's rich, which is irrational and silly.
And isn't it that devotees are often reborn in rich mercantile families as well?
Well, the word in Gita is Srimatangehe, in the home of people who have opulence. Well,
So that opulence could be either a very learned person or a very wealthy person.
yeah, the word in Sanskrit is Srimatan. Well, it's Sriman, families that have Sri. And so that can be good fortune. It can be a family, it's just be a good family, where the parents are just good parents, or you live in a beautiful place, you live out in the country or something. So Sri can mean good fortune, not just money. You know, it can also mean wealth, but it can mean other kinds of good fortune.
You often mention how sometimes on different issues, there's not like one, like the Hare Krishna, you know, this or that. Really engaged.
Well, yeah, Biba and Draupadi. So, because the nature of the material world is it can be paradoxical, there can be competing ideas. I mean, even when Prabhupada was there, he sometimes would change his mind and think, well, this is good for Krishna, that's not. So it's also a Prabhupada quoted Valena Parichita. You have to evaluate things by the fruit. What's the result? So is it working? Is it not working? It's sort of a lost art in some religious movements, actually evaluating what's working or not working, as opposed to, no, we have to do this, even if it's not working. Of course, we're talking about details. We're not talking about things like chanting Hare Krishna. But in terms of practical strategies, when you make them absolute, when you misunderstand our philosophy and believe that just practical applications, what Prabhupada calls chapter 6 of the NOD details, like dressing a certain way, cooking a certain way, or whatever, which are obviously details. I mean, it's practically comical to think that Rupa Goswami would call those things fundamental principles. So Prabhupada emphasizes in that chapter 6 that the fundamental principles you can't change, such as chanting Hare Krishna or accepting a bona fide guru and so on. But details, I mean, literally superficial details. Superficial means on the surface, like in Spanish, superficie, from Latin, of course. And so taking superficial, almost trivial details and blowing them up into fundamental laws of God is just sort of pathetic. Actually,
Conditional.
be nice. So
It was soft, it was soft.
so that's why, as I've said so many times, we really need spiritual scientists. Prabhupada brought a spiritual science. That's great. But if no spiritual scientists show up, not going to help anybody. It's like you're in the medical field. So there's a science, there's a medical science. But if there are no qualified practitioners, it's not going to help you. Okay, so what? Let's see. Oh, there's a nicely unrelated question. Prabhupada said that if we're sincere, actually, I sat at Prabhupada's feet one time. It was in New Vrindavan in Bahulavan. It was on, I think it was Janmashtami. It was 1972, the famous 1972 festival. And Prabhupada said, and I was very happy to hear this, just like a rich man pays for advertising for his business. So if you're advertising for Krishna, he'll pay for it. Don't worry about money. Just go out and preach. So, of course, we have to be competent. I mean, we can't be so eccentric that Krishna thinks maybe I'm not going to unleash this devotee on the world. So, but if we are sincere and we are trying to preach, Krishna will, Prabhupada said, just he'll sponsor us. That's what he's talking about. Okay, so we'll stop here. Thank you very much. See you, Prabhupada.